Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The Justice Department slams the Baltimore City Police Department for its policing methods. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are running hard for the top job in our country and trading nasty barbs along the way. No recall for the mayor of Portsmouth, and it's a no-go on proposed voting law changes in North Carolina. Lots to talk about on the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Wil LaVeist are here, and we'll be right back after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Some news before we get started with the Another View Roundtable. Next Friday, August the 19th, Another View will be live from Fort Monroe. We will commemorate the anniversary of the landing of the first Africans in America as part of the 2019 commemoration of the beginning of our country, 400 years of history. Now, I'll give you more details on the live broadcast and how you can participate later on in the show. But first, let's welcome our panelists. Roger Chesley is a columnist with the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his column every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hello, Barbara.
How are you?
I hope you're staying cool, Barbara.
I'm trying. It's hot out there. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor with Norfolk State University. Hey, Carol.
Hi, Barbara.
You enjoying your time off?
Oh, it's marvelous.
That's great. Bill Thomas is our community activist. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Barbara, I'm going to talk to you about history when we get out of here. That statement you made is not correct.
Well, okay, and we'll debate that.
Is that okay? There's no debate to it. There's right and wrong.
Okay, we'll talk about that in just a moment.
All right.
And author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist, who was trying desperately to get here to the studio, but the traffic said no, so he's joining us by phone. Hey, Wil, how are you?
Hi, how you doing, Barbara? Appreciate your mercy.
No problem. So before I let Bill scour me on something that I said.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay, we can talk about it later. Fine.
A lady like you, are you kidding me? Lovely? Oh, my goodness. I'm trying to be a good boy.
Bill, okay, what was wrong?
We'll talk about it later.
The 400 years?
Excuse me? The 400,
what was wrong?
The first African landed in America?
Yeah, the first landing, at Fort Comfort.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
No.
Okay.
First Africans landed in Spain. In Florida.
I'm talking about to Virginia. The first Africans to land. Then I apologize. Let me say it absolutely corrected. The first Africans to land here in Virginia, 1619. Correct?
Are in England-controlled territories in the continent of North America.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love doing that.
Hampton, not Jamestown up in North.
No, it was
we're not talking about Jamestown.
At the time, it was called Jamestown.
Exactly.
Mind your own business. We're talking about something else.
It's at Fort Comfort, which is now Fort Monroe. Can we move on to today's show?
Absolutely. I'm just so joyous to be here today.
So the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that, and I'm sorry, I got to brag a little bit.
Yes.
Another View came home with the gold.
Good for you.
We won a Salute to Excellence Award at the National Association of Black Journalists and National Association of Hispanic Journalists Conference, which was last week in Washington, D.C. So this is a national
cheerleading program for Mrs. Clinton?
It was not a cheerleading program for Mrs. Clinton, and we're going to talk about that because that was something that was very interesting, actually.
How did Donald Trump do when he came there?
Thank you. Exactly. Who did not come.
Okay.
But at any rate,
congratulations, Barbara. It was well deserved.
Thank you, Wil. We appreciate that.
And Lisa and Eric.
And Eric,
yes. Eric for the Claville Report, and it was very wonderful to be among our colleagues from all across the country.
Good for you.
And have the show recognized. So, but you guys make it work. So let's get to our first topic. Department of Justice released a scathing report about the policing methods of my hometown, Baltimore Police Department. The findings include unconstitutional stops and arrests, discrimination against African Americans, excessive force, retaliation for activities protected by the First Amendment, gender bias and sexual assault, and a need for better training and more accountability. Now, the police department asked for this report after the death of Freddie Gray or the study of them, and its release comes after the dismissal of all the charges against the officers involved in the Freddie Gray case. I listened to the news. I heard a gentleman say on air, Roger, wow, finally somebody else figures out what we've known forever.
And I think that was a lot of the focus of the report was vindication for a lot of the African Americans who live in Baltimore. And there were two things specifically. One, if you're black, and two, if you're poor. And if you're poor and black, you are under the feet of many of the officers on the streets there in the city. And it seemed like it didn't matter the race of the officer. There's a large percentage, I think it's about 42% of the sworn officers in Baltimore are black. And so we're talking about folks who often felt like they were under siege and have been saying this. The Freddie Gray incident, his death in police custody brought a lot of this to the fore for people nationally. But this is no news whatsoever to the people who live in Baltimore.
And they said that 44% of all the stops that they made occurred in two small, predominantly African-American neighborhoods that contain only 11% of the city's population, Carol.
I think the question that I had is that even before Freddie Gray, shouldn't there have, or wasn't there some way of investigating the numbers? Don't police departments get reviewed, say, on a yearly or a 2-year basis so that they can track what has happened, who it has happened to, why it has happened, what mistakes were made?
Well, I think one of the issues that the Justice Department said in its findings was there was no accountability. Even though the officers were doing this, there was no sense of they were going to be penalized for doing or charged with crimes for anything that they were doing.
Right. It's a part of the culture of that police department, unfortunately.
But the police department comes under the state, and see.
No,
police department, the city
comes under the
But
city.
the city is a part of the state system, and so at some point, I would have assumed that it would have trickled down from investigation.
Most police departments, my understanding from working with the Prince George's County Police in Maryland, who has been under a consent decree for a long time, but until there are enough complaints and so forth that the federal government gets involved, they don't routinely go in and evaluate a police department.
Oh,
so somebody's got to ask for it.
And I think one of the things that was most disturbing to me in reading through parts, the report is online for anybody who wants to read it. Yeah. It is, some of the facts in there are just simply devastating and shocking. And there were all these stops of pedestrians on the street. And the report said that only 3.7% of pedestrian stops resulted in officers issuing a citation or making an arrest. So the overwhelming, almost all the time they're stopping people on the street, they are basically angering a whole segment of the population. Yes. Now, you're not going to get any tips about crimes that are going to be taking place. You're going to be a pariah to a whole class of people in the city. Why did it persist in these policies for so long?
Well, you want to chime in?
I guess my answer to that would be because it's really not about protecting and serving. It's about driving numbers in terms of arrests and police departments, from the commissioner handing down to the troops, who's getting his cues from the mayor, who's handing the initiative down to say, hey, I want a certain amount of numbers to say that we're tough on crime and we're keeping people in their place and keeping things under control because it has economic and political benefits from it. So the low-hanging fruit are those who are the most vulnerable and the least powerful. So if you're poor and you're black, you fall into that category. You're the most vulnerable and least powerful. And so those who are in power, this is what systemic racism and classism is about. Those who are in power take advantage of that, and they take off the low-hanging fruit instead of focusing on root causes that would really make the city better. They do what they want to do to boost their own political agendas and economics.
And I think the point that Roger brought up about the fact that these are not white officers; these are all officers that that are participating in there. Bill, react to this statistic: African Americans accounted for 95% of 410 individuals stopped at least 10 times from 2010 through 2016.
And
can you imagine?
No, I absolutely can imagine. The most disappointing cruise of my life has been cruising through intersections with police officers. We hated them back with Bull Connors when they used dogs to attack children and beat us down and used the law to literally beat the living daylights out of us. And today, it doesn't matter what school your children went to, if they're male, and both of mine have been stopped for no reason whatsoever, simply because they were black. So it crosses racial lines, everything you want to be in America, it doesn't matter. The only thing that you can tell, actually, my son, who's a pretty big kid, 6'5", and went to best schools in the world, boarding schools and things, I didn't let him leave the house. I made him, when he came back from college, kept him here because he's just too hot-headed. And I just said, son, you can't do this. I mean, you can't go to, he lives in Baltimore now, or you can't go to D.C. where you live. You can't do this. So I had him work a little job with me for a year. Calm down.
There is the police chief, Kevin Davis, and I actually worked together when I worked for the Prince George's County Police, and I know Kevin to be a very fair and a good man, but I think one of his biggest challenges, and I think any police department that goes under these consent decrees, is really changing mindset.
Right.
You can change policy, but how do you change mindset?
Right. You have to change mindset. You have to change culture, and that really has to come from not so much from the top down. It has to come from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about people. Yeah. The chief is not out there on a day-to-day basis. Right. Patrol on the street. It's the patrol officers who are doing there. And if you get the chance, I urge you to read a piece by Jerry Bembry, a good friend of mine. He's worked at the Baltimore Sun and is now writing for The Undefeated. He talks about his days in Baltimore, about how many times that he was stopped. And a lot of what he did almost immediately when he would be stopped by police is say, I am a reporter for the Baltimore Sun. Okay. And that would cut a lot of nonsense out from the
so
from the police officers.
He had to let them know right up front.
But he said, a lot of people couldn't do that.
Right.
And a lot of people, he was a young man at the time, and it was just astounding how many times he got stopped for nonsense and was never charged.
Go ahead, Will.
Well, Barbara, there also has to be incentives for them to change the culture from the bottom up, because what happens, and I've said it on this show before, it's not a popular thing to say, but like you pointed out in those stats, there's a lot of black officers who are participating in that same cultural mindset. And unfortunately, there are a lot of black officers that are like, for example, like Roger's dad, who was a cop in D.C., who went in to serve, to make a difference, and really cared about his people. I've got plenty of friends in New York, and there are plenty who are officers in New York. There are plenty of officers on the Baltimore force who want to be that way as well. But the culture and the mindset is, you do what you need to do to get along. And when you try to make that kind of stand, you oftentimes become a target from your own compatriots.
Right.
We've experienced that as journalists in the newsroom.
Yes.
If you try to make a stand against certain things like that, you got your own compatriots, your own folk, who will do the bidding of attacking you and making sure that you are not the one who is making the change, because they want to maintain the status quo, because, again, it fits their own personal, economic, and political agenda. And that's a crying shame, because there's a lot of people who have sacrificed, died, went to the front lines to make a difference, opened up doors, and then these folks come in and they have no appreciation for what their true role is.
Yeah,
and that's my point. The leadership, the political leadership in Baltimore is African American.
Now,
totally.
Now.
Exactly.
I mean, now,
I mean, because we got to understand that this history
goes all the way back.
Right.
All the way back.
Having for a long
But
time.
you would suspect that once one of our children or one of our whatever got in that position, that this mentality would be broken and it wouldn't be tolerated. For the same reason that Will is suggesting in the newsroom or in the police station that things continue to happen because we don't use the moral authority once we get the power to effectively make changes.
I think it's difficult to do so. Also, when you're fighting against a whole structure that's been in place for decades at a time, it's been in place for decades. It's not going to change overnight. It's going to be a long, hard slog to make some of the changes you need to do.
Let's talk to Damon in Norfolk. Hi, Damon. You're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Long-time fan. So I'm a white male. 3 years ago, I was arrested for a felonious weapons possession and purchase because there's a administrative mix-up with the state police. So the Norfolk City Police came to arrest me, and just the whole incident was just terrible. And they wouldn't let me speak. They wouldn't explain anything to me, and just being, just ugly. And I ended up being in jail, and everybody I encountered was being terrible to me. And in hindsight, got it all figured out. But if I'd been black, how much worse that situation would have been.
Wow.
And there's just this pervasive culture of, interactions with the police department of guilty until proven innocent, and kind of distancing themselves from that public servant role that they, say they have and to protect and serve. It's just everybody's automatically guilty. Like I said, that happened 3 years ago. Every time I've had an incident, where I interact with law enforcement or even my wife, but that record comes up and they'll ask me, "Do you have weapons on you?" Well, we need to search you. And like I said, if I was black, just how much worse that whole situation would be. And now that's changed my attitude towards law enforcement, where I avoid it, because I just don't want to. I just don't want to have the interaction, and I don't want to put myself through it. And like I said, now in this day and age, the militarization of the police and just how it's almost elitist they seem now. And there's some great cops out there, but just like you're saying, this culture
Damon,
that permeates.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Prior to this happening to you, did you have a very different perspective about policing and interaction, number one? And number two, as you heard about what was happening with African Americans and police, did you kind of blow it off then versus how you feel about it now? Did that change, in other words?
Absolutely. Spending, 8 hours in the city jail and then not being told anything. And I had just come off a deployment with special operations where I was carrying a weapon every day and doing the job. I had a lot of friends that are cops, and I wanted to, maybe look into being a cop. And I grew up in an area that's predominantly white, always had positive interactions with the cops. So when I hear about, interactions with blacks on the news, I was like, how can that be possible? Because I have this different perspective. So, of course, in the media, of course, there's going to be this uproar with Black Lives Matter because people just don't know, because a lot of white people just aren't being arrested and having negative interactions with the police. So, of course, my perspective changed drastically after that.
You know what, Damon? We really appreciate your honesty. Thank you so much for that call. We appreciate it. So, the thing that I think about is when my 6-year-old granddaughter says, "Grandma, the police aren't good." She's already got that in her head. She lives in Baltimore, unfortunately. But I wonder how we get, when we talk about we're going to do community policing and we're going to get out and get to know the communities and so forth. Is it almost too late for that? I mean, I don't know where they go from here.
Well, I don't think it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Will.
No, I was gonna agree that I don't think it's too late. Again, as someone, as a reporter who covered police and had that mindset after growing up in Brooklyn, New York, which is, just like a neighborhood that was just like West Baltimore, my neighborhood Brownsville, that I had that mindset where I felt that way about police. And then after covering them and spending time with these officers and spending time with the ones who really did and do want to protect and serve, it changed my perspective. And I started to see what those particular officers are often up against in trying to deal within their own precincts, within their own shops, within this pervasive mentality. And the thing is that that's so sad about it, again, coming back to the black officers who do this, is that, we were out at National Association of Black Journalists and Hispanic Journalists, and one of the things in one of the panel discussions that was talked about was how, police officers are the only people in society who have the power to take away your freedom. They are empowered by law. The President of the United States can't even do that. Mm-hmm. And you put this kind of power in the hands of a young person who's coming out of this same society that has systemic racism. If they don't have the kind of clarity of protecting and serving and respecting human dignity of all people, regardless of their color, this is where you get that. And then they're in an environment where if they try to go against that grain, they're not supported, and they're thinking about their low salary, their families, trying to get back home. People start making decisions, and it's a tough job, as it is. It's a tough job.
It's a very tough job.
So they start making decisions. Hey, let me go to the path of least resistance. And then what happens is you have a traffic stop. And and no one is thinking about the last thing in anybody's mind is that it's going to end up in a death. And that's what happened.
But anyhow, this is not let's beat and talk the police down because, like Roger's dad, and there's 10 million other police officers that saves our lives and are out there in the road saving us and taking care of us when we're harmed. They're there to protect us. It all goes back in my judgment. And sure, you had bad apples in every kind of intellectual environment or company environment you have. It goes back to leadership. We have to have leadership, and I think Mayor Alexander is going to be one of those individuals that's going to stand tall and face this the way it should be faced. It's not going to be acceptable. So that the good police officers, which are 98.99% of them, can all get on board with the same thing, and just not to say we beat you guys. We love you guys for what you're doing. Just help us clean your house up so that we can all live in a safe environment where respect and mutual respect is appreciated by all.
Carol,
and I think you're right, because a few weeks ago I went to a workshop with the police department and Black Lives Matter. It was held in Slover Library, and there were different perspectives and different ways of addressing things, but I was proud that people remained calm, and they said this is one young man said it's like an onion. There are varying levels. There's an educational level, there's a housing level, there's a transportation level. We need to address each of these, and we can't just stop now. We've got to continue to have these meetings. So the members of the police department were there, educators were there, the community was there, and I said, this is a good first step. And
Absolutely.
Hopefully it will continue.
So the officers in the Freddie Gray case, or all those charges were dismissed. They said the prosecutor didn't have enough information or material to bring forth the charges that she had tried to get them on. Here in Portsmouth, though, former Portsmouth police officer Stephen Rankin was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter in the killing of 18-year-old William Chapman. The jury recommended a sentence of 2.5 years in prison. Rankin is the first one, if I'm not mistaken, of a lot of these high-profile shootings that is actually where the officer has actually been given time. Am I right in that, Roger?
I think you're right in that, although I think it would be shocking if the officer down in South Carolina who shot and killed the black man who was running, fleeing away from him, I would be stunned if he is not convicted and get some time as well. But as I said in the column last week, after the conviction, he is just the 13th officer nationwide to be convicted of murder or manslaughter in a jury trial since 2005, according to research by a professor at Bowling Green State University. So I think that shows how rare it is for an officer to be found guilty, and it's very possible it could be overturned on appeal because his attorneys have made it clear that they're going to appeal. There were some things that were prevented. They were prevented from introducing at that first trial. The Portsmouth judge Morrison didn't allow that certain things in about William Chapman, and that could be overturned. I was surprised. Partly because of the in the verdict, partly because of how difficult it is for such convictions, but also there were so many witnesses that were there who said there was some type of confrontation there between Chapman and the officer. And I was also somewhat ambivalent because, the officer, it seemed very harsh for him to kill somebody on basically what started as a shoplifting charge. But what was he supposed to do after the suspect came at him at the way he did? And, prosecutor Ms. Morales talked about he brought a gun to a fist fight. Well, he's not supposed to get beat up. I mean, he's supposed to be able to defend himself. And so, it really was a very gray area. It was really, and I wished some of the jurors had agreed to speak. It's been hard to get some of their identity. Well, it's been hard to get their identities. Their identities have been sealed so far in the court record.
You want to respond?
No. I just think that the prosecutor, the young lady in Portsmouth, did an excellent job. I think that was good. They kept it all aboard, dealt with the facts and things. And I just think this whole matter has to have better leadership. There's no way, and I'm all for police officers and all that kind of stuff. There's no question about it. But I just can't imagine. I wouldn't shoot my dog, I'm telling you, or a dog. Well, if they were coming at me and I had a gun and they could hurt me, I would try to do something physical with that situation as not to take a life. It's not worth it. You got to have some common sense now.
But he used the taser on him first, and then the taser was knocked out of his hands. And he said, I listened to the direct examination of Rankin and the cross-examination of Rankin. And, one of the things he said was police policy says that you go after you use that level of defense or that level of his taser, he was not supposed to go next to pepper spray. He's supposed to go to something higher.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. If you're just joining us, it's the Another View Roundtable with Roger Chesley of the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow of NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. I want to move us on to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Wow. Now, Bill, you were at the Republican convention.
I was an elected delegate from the 3rd District and served my people, I think, very, very well.
Well, since there were only 18 African Americans in the whole conference, we were looking for you.
0.001%. And Stephen Colbert, all of the people, Chris Wallace, I said, no, thank you.
We were looking for you.
We will not. My daughter would not have...
Did that 18 include the people who were serving?
Oh, that's not even right.
Now, Will, you were at the Democratic convention. Is that correct?
Yes, I was. I was there as a reporting for my show. Yep.
Okay, so you were there reporting for your show. So when I went to NABJ last week, I was listening to the Baltimore public radio station at Morgan State University, and one of the professors was talking about his experience taking student journalists to both conventions, and the stark difference that he felt in the way that he was treated at the Republican convention versus the way he was treated at the Democratic convention. He said at the Republican convention that the students were given top treatment, that interviews were brought over to them, that they were fed, that they were made to feel welcome, and so forth. And that when they got to the Democratic convention, it was more of we just take you guys for granted, and we know you're going to vote Democrat, so therefore we don't have to go out of our way to make anything happen. I'm curious from Bill and Will's perspectives, what you think about that.
Well, from Cleveland, just from a sense of location, it was totally isolated in a very confined area. So once you got through all the security, which was enormous, with 10 feet high fences and all those kinds of things, you couldn't go back and forth. I think the other situation was they were having it outside in the football arena that's completely outside of Philadelphia. So that probably gave it a little logistics. But if you got through the logistics of getting into behind the gates in Cleveland, you were okay. Because they had cordoned off like 9 blocks of Cleveland.
Wow.
And with 10 feet high fences. Wow. And so you were locked down. You couldn't go anywhere. So I think it's a matter of logistics, as I've been told by some students that went to the event in Philadelphia. It was just very hard to get into, and the logistic didn't work well. You weren't in downtown Philadelphia. You were outside. You had to take a bus or drive a car, and all that stuff is impossible.
So, Will, do you think that the Democrats do take the African-American vote for granted?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, from a journalistic standpoint, I didn't feel any of that kind of neglect, so to speak. And I think that logistics could have been part of it. In Philadelphia, you had part of the convention was at the convention center, and a lot of the hotels and people were staying was downtown Philadelphia. And then what a lot of people saw on television, Bill correctly said, was at the stadium. And I didn't feel sort of confined in any way. From a voter's standpoint, I think there certainly is a taken for granted, especially in who the Republicans are running as a candidate now. And you hear the polls saying that Donald Trump has little to no, 1% or less American support. And I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that this is actually an opportunity for the Congressional Black Caucus, for other leaders, political leaders in the black community, to really get some substantive guarantees from the Democratic Party and the candidate. In fact, one of the conversations I had was with Bobby Scott and also Lionel Spruill and Mamie Locke as members of the Congressional Black Caucus and also Virginia Black Caucuses about this very issue, that for all of these years, a lot of the issues that the Black Caucus is supposed to be championing on the part of Black Americans haven't really been addressed and been taken for granted. And they've been speaking out about it as well. You might have heard earlier this year, Louise Lucas, very much was outspoken, the senator from Virginia, the state senator of Virginia, very outspoken about not feeling that she's even being heard by her own colleagues. So I think the Black Caucus should really be fighting and say, hey, this is going to be a tight race, and we need some guarantees because the black vote is going to be critical to Hillary Clinton winning.
Carol, do you think that because of the divisiveness with Donald Trump and how America is feeling and so forth, talk to us about why it is more critical than ever that African Americans vote this time? Because you hear a lot of people saying, I'm just not voting.
Well, because I don't think you can win by default, and I think that many of the issues that confront the black community don't go from the top down, they go from the bottom up. So not only is voting for president important, but also that person's ability to negotiate with Congress becomes very important. So their vote is not just the top, it also has implications from the bottom up as well. I have heard people say, I'm just not voting. I don't like Trump and I don't like Hillary. And I'm like, so you're losing by default. Why would you not look at the issues very carefully? Now there is no excuse. One time we were locked into the newspaper deal, but now you can go online and look at what the perspectives are, what the philosophies are, and what the issues are, and then assess and say, okay, this is how I'm voting.
But Roger, is anybody talking about the issues? I mean, I know this week they came out with their economic packages.
I think one of the candidates has tried to talk about the issues, but she is pretty much getting drowned out by the coverage that Donald Trump has gotten almost from day one since he announced. And it's the news cycle is almost always about him. And so it's really hard, I think, for her to break through that. I think at one point she was trying to see if she could play a kind of running out the clock issue and see if she could just do it that way. Smartly, I think she's trying to get her policies and platforms and say her differences between the two. I would surely hope that everybody does vote so that you can say you have a stake in this election, not just for the president, but for Congress, and in certain cities, they're going to have city council elections in the fall. Some cities do, some cities don't. So, yeah, it's important, even if you are disenchanted. But to kind of paraphrase, I think, was it Cheney or Rumsfeld, we go with the army that we have. Well, these are the two major party candidates. So, I mean, this is what you have, so you have to go with that.
Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, and even when you're looking between the lines for what was said and what wasn't said, for example, if you look at Mr. Trump's economic policies, then you say, well, he didn't address it. You look at what he said and begin to question, okay, who's going to pay for this? How is this going to work? And it is incumbent upon us to ask the questions to ourselves and our organizations as to let's analyze this even further.
So, Bill, when Donald Trump says things like the president and Hillary Clinton are the founders of ISIS, I mean,
give me a break.
I'm really trying to understand, and I'm curious as to how you have all these Republicans who are now saying we're going to go help Hillary win. We're going over to the other side. I mean, what happened?
Washington and I think our electoral process has been broke since 1989. This is just the culmination of all this stuff. Three things I think that are absolutely true. Washington's broken. Number two, we don't have the leadership to take us where we need to go. And then we need for someone to speak for the people that are being disenfranchised. And neither one of them are doing that. I think you have to, but have to look at it that way because it's just such. I would have never thought in my years of life that I would get into an environment where it was just totally isolation of economic, educational, and just outright mental racism on both sides. I just never saw it. It's just unbelievable. We can't make progress because none of us are doing the kinds of things that needs to be done. Nobody's really talking about what really needs to be done. And to me, it's not that difficult. I understand the politics of it all, and I understand why he's saying what he's saying and why she's doing what she's doing, just for pure politics. But as either one right now, and I would say that even where I am today, talk to America.
But as a delegate, I mean, don't you? Did that do anything to you in terms of how you defend the person that the party selected?
I don't defend people.
Okay.
I defend ideas and principles.
Okay.
So
what are his ideas and principles that I'm really trying to understand? Yeah. Seriously.
Gotta put me on the spot. That's not really a spot. The issue really becomes I'm not dealing with the people. I never have. I'm supporting what I think is the best route, the best system to take us where we need to go. Okay. And I think that's the free enterprise system. I truly believe.
Hang on, Will, I'm coming to you.
I truly believe that Washington is broken. I love Scott Ridgel. I think he's a great gentleman, and I'll stand behind him and what he said. But he didn't do enough. If he doesn't like Mr. Trump and he doesn't want Mr. Trump to win, then he should go all the way. Meaning? And figure out a way how to get somebody else or start a new plan, and we're going to do something new in 4 years. Not just to go to status quo. I love Scott. He's a good guy, principled guy, and everything else.
Well, he's gone for a third party candidate.
May as well be voting for Hillary Clinton as far as I'm concerned when you say that. And that's just the numbers.
Will?
I was going to say, Barbara, is that, I mean, the way it works, and those of us who spent some time covering campaigns, and I know Carol knows this as a political scientist, is that in campaigns, I mean, they do a lot of polling, research, and they identify, okay, what is going to resonate with our voters? Because the name of the game is getting your own people to come out and vote. And so they look at what messages resonates with the voters who we need to come out. So Trump, to his credit, has added a lot of new potential voters into the system, and they are very much on an anti-Hillary sort of bent. So he's speaking to that. So it's illogical as some of the things that he said. And me personally, I'm in the camp of people who don't really believe that he really, truly wants to become president. He's as surprised that he's gotten this far as a lot of us. But I think the polling and his research that his team has identified says that this kind of messaging is what is going to inspire and bring the people from his camp out to vote to bring them over the top. Now, on the other side, it's the same mission. you got to bring out get your own people to come out and vote. So their research has indicated to them a certain kind of messaging, and that's what you're seeing Hillary Clinton do. And that's what it comes down to. That they're doing the messaging that is going to get their own people out to vote.
Just one quick question.
Hold on.
No.
Go ahead, Bill.
That's old politics. The politics today is the independent voters. Trump has his people lined up, and they're going to vote for Trump. Hillary Clinton has her people, and they're going to vote for her. The issue right now is that yellow line that they show on all those graphs and all those polls they do. The independent voter is going to make the difference in this election because everybody else has drawn sides. Now, Mr. Trump, you would think that he would be doing polling and sensitivity and marketing-driven things. If he was doing that, then he wouldn't be doing what he's doing. He couldn't be doing what he's doing because his margin of victory is going to be with independent voters.
Okay, let's talk to Kelly Anderson in Suffolk. Hi, Kelly. You're on the air.
I'm calling as a white woman who has voted Republican all my life, and I've just recently made public my intentions to vote for Hillary Clinton to go all the way, just as your guest said. Mm-hmm. And I'm calling because I've had friends that are close to me, black friends, express that they actually feel fear this year with Trump, and that's what I fear for our minorities specifically. And I just wondered if your guest could talk about that, if that is something.
What are they saying that they fear?
Well, I think what struck me most is as a younger woman who's very apolitical, who I've known for a long time, is that this is the first time in America where she's felt afraid to be a black woman. And because of what she sees stirred up by the Trump campaign, the hate talk, whether it's at rallies, whether it's his policies. And I really feel for that, too. I felt like this country was moving forward. And as a Republican, as a white Republican, felt like for years we've been saying we're not racist. We don't feel that way. The policies we support are not against the black community, but they're to help the black community. And I feel like what Trump has sadly drawn out of my Republican Party is this horrible side, and he's proven that what everyone feared about our party is, at least to some degree and to some extent, true. And I'm appalled by it, and I'm embarrassed by it, and I'm scared by it. I'm scared what will come out if people that feel this way are given even a bigger voice and a presidential candidate or president to reflect it and to lead it.
Well, Kelly, thanks so much for your honesty and for that call. We appreciate that, Roger.
I think one thing I like to say, first of all, Kelly, thank you for those thoughts. I think you said that better than a lot of people. I think you articulated, some of the fear of blacks and whites this year, regardless of party, of who are some of the people that are supporting Trump. And the New York Times did a long, followed with a camera over several months, some of the people showing up at Trump rallies and campaigns, some of the statements, some of the confrontations. And that really showed a very ugly side of America in that footage. But secondly, I do want to make this point. There have been kind of a pox on both houses about, Hillary's bad and Trump is bad. And I just want to say, it's not really a comparison. You've got one who's actually done things in government, good or bad, right or wrong, who has done things in government. Trump has made so many statements about lying Hillary. Yeah, there are a lot of politicians who don't tell the whole truth all the time. A lot of the stuff that has come out of Mr. Trump's mouth are just off the top of his head and lies. He has not released his taxes. There's certain things. There's no presidential candidate has not released taxes.
He doesn't have to.
For several years. He hasn't done anything in the political sphere in terms of actually running anything. He is shown to be unhinged. Anything you want to say about Hillary, she at least has a resume that's out there in the public sphere of running, doing things in government. I just don't get this false equivalence between the two candidates, and I think it's just crazy.
It's not a false equivalency.
It is.
The issue, like it or not, the press, and I'm just not calling you guys the liberal press, it is horrible. I mean, you guys, I'm going to talk in the vernacular, have taken little things and just have blown it out of proportion.
Saying that
little things.
Bill,
I mean, it's
Bill,
just, he doesn't
Bill.
talk political. That is correct. And he should talk political because that is politics. I understand all of that. But a lot of these things that the press is putting out there and the slant that these liberal people are telling folks, I'm not afraid of Donald Trump any more than I'm afraid of Putin. It doesn't matter because I know I'm an individual with individual rights and I know how to protect them. What I think he's saying is what I'm agreeing with is that the federal government is broken and people like Hillary Clinton and others and Bush and some others have driven us to this state of being, and it needs to be changed. It needs to go a different way.
Hold on.
Like
Roger.
a broken clock.
Wait a minute, Will.
Like a broken clock. Twice a day you can be right. And so he has made some statements that have been correct. There are problems with the federal government. There are problems with the way the government works. I have never, in my lifetime, 56 years old, I have never heard a political candidate for president suggest that the opponent be shot dead.
He did not do that.
It's what he said this week.
Tell me, Roger.
He said this week.
He did say it,
He
Bill.
did say it. He might not have used those exact words, but he did say. Wait a minute. Let me finish this.
Wait,
You had two Kennedys. You had two Kennedys write an op-ed this week opposing this vehemently of what his comments and what his suggestions are. You don't do that if you are trying to run, if you're trying to be the president of the U.S.
Tell me when he said what you just said.
He
Give me the
said
point,
comments
point
about the
he
Second
Amendment. Shot
Amendment. He said comments about the Second Amendment
No.
that can only be inferred
your mind.
that he was no, Bill, come on now.
Oh, my goodness.
Come on,
You got a brain to think
everybody.
with.
No.
You
That's
know
right.
what he was saying.
No, I do not.
You don't have
I
a
don't
brain to
think he's
think with.
stupid.
Okay, hold on.
I don't think
Hold
he is.
on, hold
But
on.
he didn't say what you said, Roger. That's
Will,
what I'm saying.
Will.
Yeah, I was going
Go
to say
ahead.
that I never totally agree with Bill or Roger on anything, but I actually lean on Bill's side on this because Roger, in a sense, just made his point, and that is that the whole Trump phenomenon is an indictment on the media as well.
Thank you.
Because A, the media didn't see him coming.
Absolutely.
So B, if
Neither
you
did
go
the
back to the
Republican
call,
Party.
That's true, too.
no, but it's an indictment on the entire political process, which includes the media. So if you go back to the caller's comment, the feeling was that we are moving forward as a country. Why? Because we got an African-American president, two-termer, and all of that. But along the way, there has been an undercurrent of people who have continued to remain very angry about government, very angry and agitated on issues of race. So where was the media in this? Where was the media in the fact that black wealth, and we were just talking earlier about blacks dying at the hands of police.
Okay, we got 30 seconds left in the show, Will. Yeah, we are out of time. I cannot believe we didn't even get to some of the topics, but I knew this was
We
going to say.
can't let this go here.
Well, we are going to talk about
No.
we are going to talk about politics from now through the election, and so we will be able to continue
Will and I
this
agree.
conversation.
Are you kidding me? This can't stop.
Because so next month we will continue this conversation and whatever else happens to be happening in the news, and we will be right back.
Hi, I'm LaShawn Merritt, and if you want to discuss the issues and celebrate the successes of the African American community, listen to Another View on 89.5.
Mr. LaShawn Merritt, who is running tonight in the men's 400 meter. And we didn't even get to the Olympics, but everything's just been fabulous about that. The Virginia Stage Company has a zesty new project called The Line, Art for Social Change. It's a unique way for the Hampton Roads community to discuss social issues. Our Lisa Godley gives us an up-close view at how The Line is getting folks actively involved by allowing them to use their voices to create awareness.
James Baldwin's play Blues for Mr. Charlie takes a hard look at the nation's racial divide, specifically how a white man is able to murder a black man without punishment.
Loud Britain come to the door, and he say,
"You ready, boy? Are you ready, boy?" "No, I ain't ready. I got a record to play and a drink to finish."
Baldwin wrote Blues for Mr. Charlie in 1964, but decades later, many of the same fears and misunderstandings that plagued American society back then still exist. This is why the Virginia Stage Company partnered with the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities to cross what continues to be a painful divide. Tommy Coleman works with VSC's Education and Community Engagement Division.
It was 2 years ago, and a lot of what we were talking about was Michael Brown and residual effects of Trayvon Martin, everything that resulted in young black men being killed by police or being turned into monsters. And that was the reason we did choose Blues for Mr. Charlie, because it was a response to Emmett Till. And I'm like, this is exactly what we want to say in art form.
Mr. Loud?
Good night, Joel.
Mr. Loud! Richard! And I never saw that boy again.
I feel like sometimes there's not as many open conversations about racism or economic inequity unless they're behind closed doors or in certain circles of people. But we are living in an age where there's so much information and people still aren't using it.
VSC's Kat Martin agrees.
We are relatively all equal in terms of the law, but we all know that that's not actually the case within our social interactions. There are no signs in windows right now telling you people can't go places. But there is a boundary. There are ways that you feel when you walk into a space, and space can be coded for race.
The line gives participants an opportunity to investigate the racial divide without being preachy.
It's not going to be a sit down and we talk at you. It's going to be a you immerse yourself in it and you talk to us and we talk to you and we talk together and we try to come away from that with something that we've all agreed upon.
We will give you the education. We will give you the language. It's up to you how to use it. And hopefully you're going to use it to forward momentum and for progression and for positive reasons, because that's what this is about.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And Lisa's piece was produced by Another View intern Taylor White, a Hampton University junior. And by the way, our own Lisa Godley, along with WHRO producer Danny Epperson, are cast members in the production of The Line. The Line will take place on Sunday, August 21st at 3 p.m. at the Slover Library. For more information, check out our website at anotherviewradio.org. Next Friday, Another View will be live at Fort Monroe, the site of the landing of the first Africans in America. And that's what they say, Bill. It's the beginning of a weekend full of events commemorating the American evolution, Virginia to America, 1619 to 2019. This is the kickoff event of a series of activities that over the next 4 years commemorate key events in 1619 that helped shape America's founding, culminating with the 400th anniversary in 2019. So now is your chance to come and watch us do live radio. Simply join us at the gazebo at Fort Monroe in Hampton at 11:30 on Friday, August the 19th. There is limited seating, so you may want to bring a lawn chair, and be sure to wear flats because there is a long walk from the parking lot to the gazebo. We'll be right on the water, and among our guests will be the new National Park Superintendent for Fort Monroe, Terry Brown. Don't miss the Another View history lesson live from Fort Monroe. It's absolutely free, so come on out and join us. And that's it for our show today. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Taylor White answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And come join us live next Friday from Fort Monroe. If you can't make it, we'll see you on the radio next Friday at noon for Another View.